Okay, and today we're going to finish our look at the Preferences User section, and we're starting our look here with the Other Options screen. And again, like many of the other screens in Preferences, we see our standard list of our users on the left-hand side. And as is the case with several of the other screens, all of the main options we would use here on the right. For the most part, these top options, the calendar view, this just controls when you initially go into the calendar screen, which of the views in the calendar view tab you default to, whether monthly, weekly, or daily. But most of these other options, assigned calendar filters, the Skype option, the mapping option, pretty much all of these are going to be set and forget, and for the most part the defaults are generally fine. The one you may want to set, though, is your to-do look ahead. So what does this actually control? Well, what this actually controls is on the dashboard, there is a to-do list, which is right here in my case. So which to-dos actually show up on this widget is controlled by this look ahead. So any to-do items within that many days from now moving forward that are not yet completed, and I believe also any to-dos that are past that you have not yet closed out, will appear on this list. Any outside of that range or any that are already marked as completed will not display here. And then the last option on this screen is the Show Document Color Scheme option. And there's a couple of places this actually takes into account. The first is on the Document Template screen here in Preferences, and the other is actually in the Project Documents tab itself. So what does that actually mean? Well, there's a color scheme, right? So when you initially go into this screen, assuming your project folders and permissions and such are all set up as they would normally be, there is a color coding to this list, as well as the actual documents that would be on the list on the right. And basically the three colors is gray, green, or red. Okay, so the important thing to know here is that when you go into this Documents tab, the program actually goes to your server, finds the folder where this project's items are stored, and does a live look in real time to see what folders and files are really there. It doesn't just rely on the records in the database. So the color scheme indicates that if it's gray, it means that it went out, it found the folder on the drive, it does exist, and it does already have a record of that folder saved in the database. It knows about it, it knows what it's called, it knows where it's located, and all is good with the world. Green, as you see this one here, means that it went out and did its look, and it sees, oh, there's a new folder or a new file on the drive in the storage area for this project, and I see it there, it clearly exists, but I actually don't have a record of that yet in the database. So it just tells you that so that you can do the necessary save to get that into the database, so the system does know about it and you can then start using it to put documents into. And then finally red, which would be the opposite of this, which would be perhaps an old record or an orphaned record. Or perhaps someone went out to the storage folder for this project and unknowingly or deliberately, if they were trying to maybe clean things up perhaps, deleted a record, and now the system does its live look and says, oh, well, we see that there used to be a file or there used to be a folder with this name, but it's actually not there anymore. So it'll still show you that item on the list here, but it will code it in red so it's very obvious that there's a problem with it. The next section we're going to look at is security and its brother, reports. These are actually both security screens. And as you would expect, still the same typical list of users on the left, as is the case with most of your other screens. But also, we now have the main location where we set the actual security rights that your users will have. And basically the idea here is that although they do have a work group, and this work group does correspond with the workgroup security farther up in preferences. That is only an initial setting. So if you change this and save, all of this person's security rights will be updated to be in line with what their workgroup is. But that's not a hard-coded limitation. So if, for instance, you say, well, Howard Rourke, yes, he is an administrator, but in this particular case, we want Howard to have all the rights of an administrator except for this one. Let's say, for instance, in this case, well, we actually don't want him to be able to access billing, but he should have all the other administrative rights. Well, we can do that. So we can make a change at the user level and then save that change. And the system will tell us, okay, that's done. And it will actually give us a little green box here to say that, yes, it is in fact now disallowed. And the green will tell us that if he were in line with exactly what his work group would be, this would be checked. So the green tells us that this is opposite of how his work group would normally be set up. Same thing with reports. And also, I forgot to mention, there are actually quite a few different categories here. So I'm only showing you the billing and payment screen, but there are quite a few others. So there's a pretty extensive list of security rights. Same thing with reports. The only difference here is this is a security that controls whether or not this person actually has the right to actually run each of these reports. So you can actually disallow access to individual reports within the system. And again, there are a number of topics that cover all of the areas within the reports module that there are. So we have permissions for each and every one of the reports in those sections. And that's pretty much all there is to security and reports. Actually, very powerful, but pretty straightforward. And then the last screen is the performance screen. And there's actually a corresponding performance report in the reports module as well. There's also a reports module, or a performance report in this screen as well for convenience off the print option. But basically the idea here is you can get a quick and dirty look at how efficient your people are working. And efficiency being how many hours per week they're required to work, and how many of those hours are actually on billable, chargeable projects, as opposed to internal work or stuff that was deemed to be no charge or what have you. So that is just a basic overall efficiency screen. And in fact, we can actually set a threshold here that we want our firm to always be at. And then anyone, actually, I should put that up a little bit higher. And then anyone who is under that threshold, and I think I do not have my database set up correctly here for this demonstration, but normally that entry would actually be highlighted in a big bold red color so that it was much more visibly obvious that someone is actually lagging behind. And then you can use that as a very easy way to know that you may perhaps need to start asking questions and looking deeper into, well, why isn't this person as efficient? So there's that. And finally, just the ability that you can in fact set a date range on this. So if you do want to see the current month to date perhaps, you can very easily do that. Refresh the screen, and yeah, okay, now you can see in fact that I have no hours currently in the system. So with an efficiency threshold of 80%, everyone is in red. So that's what that would have done. And then this controls what date range of time we're actually looking at in the first place. So that is the performance screen. And that will actually do it for the Preferences Users section. And we will continue our look at the rest of the Preferences screens in a future video in this series.